This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm in Sacramento today, and I am joined by Chris Holden. He is the majority leader in the California State Assembly. So I'd like to speak with you about education.
Yes.
As you know, under California law today, local school districts can seek to bond for construction purposes with a 55% vote. And they've done pretty well. I think in the last election, about 80% of those bonds passed. But there is an issue statewide as to whether there should be a state bond to look at construction projects. Former Assemblyman Hagman looked at that last year. The governor didn't go for it, but you're coming back. You're coming back on the school bond issue. What can you tell us, sir?
Well, there was also another education bond bill last year that was put on hold because of the water bond and the governor not wanting to have too many bonds out there. But I think the fundamental question really on the table is there a role that state government should be playing in providing support for local schools, public schools, and providing, addressing the infrastructure needs. And I think there is. There is. I think because I think when we're talking about public schools and recognizing that we're putting so many resources and great teachers in the classroom, that it doesn't make sense for them to be in the classroom and have leaky roofs or have air conditioning not working and things of that nature.
What I'm wondering, though, is given that local school districts have been so successful in going to their voters and saying, here's our construction bond, here's our facilities bond, 80% passage rate with the 55% requirement. I mean, that's not easy. You know, again, I'm just posing it. I mean,
no, I think what probably the answer to the question is that not all parts of the state are equal, and there are some districts where it is going to be impossible for them. If that's where the line in the sand is, they will never be able to go to their electorate and get those kind of resources because of the economic standards or ceiling that they find themselves in.
Because they can't bond? Meaning they just don't have the credit worthiness for it to be wise to move forward? So let's talk about your proposed bond, AB 148. I understand there's no specific figure in place, but can you tell us what you're thinking?
Well, I mean, I think what was happening is that everyone was waiting to see how the governor's budget would reflect on infrastructure for schools. And
how did it?
Well, I think thematically it talked about infrastructure. I think that certainly there was nothing specific, and because there was nothing specific, there became a reaction to that from other interests to pursue getting signatures to place a bond on the ballot.
I know the CSBA, California School Boards Association, is looking diligently to do that. I'm not sure if they're mirroring your proposal.
No. Well, but their bond number is around $9 billion.
$9 billion, which was what was proposed last year.
That's correct.
But then, as you probably know, it was pared down to, I think, about $4 or $5 billion.
That's correct.
And still didn't go. The governor signaled no way.
Well, I think he did for two reasons. One, again, he had pivoted to focus exclusively on the water bond.
No doubt.
And I think that, to kind of spread this out. And I think he's also been very concerned and said very plainly he's trying to drive down the wall of debt. And, if we keep focusing on bonds, it's going to put more pressure on the area that we were trying to
And there's no question he is. I mean, it's undeniable that is what he said. So query whether he's going to be willing to sign legislation which would allow a bond on the ballot. I mean, if there's signatures, I guess he doesn't have a say in the matter per se. But
well, I think it's what we're trying to say. One, back to the first question, that this is an important area for the state to be involved. I think that is the threshold question. So then, if it is, what becomes the right number? And what we're trying to do is initiate a conversation that kind of draws us all into sustainable, long-term funding sources. So this isn't a problem that we'll be able to bond our way out of. You're looking at need that exceeds $100 billion. And so for us, we want to be responsible about long-term how we can address the issues. We agree with the governor. We don't think that there are pressure points to where bonding will put us back in a bad place. We don't want to go there. But at the same time, there are immediate emergency needs within schools where our kids are today that we need to address, and we need to address quickly.
Is it time for you and your allies, your colleagues, to talk to the CSBA? Because if they're coming in at $9 billion collecting signatures, let's just say hypothetically you're looking at $2 or $3 billion.
Sure.
If you get both bonds on the ballot, could cancel out. You know, what about unifying forces?
Yeah, I think at some point, without a doubt, there will be, as they like to say, a grand bargain down the road representing something. And clearly, if the voters are comfortable voting and supporting a $9 billion bond measure, you know, we certainly don't want to get in the way of that.
One could argue.
Right. But we also recognize that there is conversation out there regarding extending Prop 30.
Right.
And our number, or looking at something more on the lower end, is recognizing that there are conversations that are emerging around that.
It's
and I think that's
interesting.
important.
On the Prop 30 question, if I may.
Sure.
The discussion as to whether to extend, they're not falling on partisan lines. I mean, you got a lot of Democrats that are very nervous about even considering an extension because their view is, look, we made a promise to the voters.
Sure.
But the argument goes, look, we're used to it. Why not extend it anyway?
Yeah.
You know, what's your sense?
Well, I mean, look, I think that all of these questions are appropriate and they need to be on the table, and we need to be transparent, and we need to continue to engage with the voters. We need to find out where their comfort level is because, you know, look, we've got great needs in the state. The economy is doing better. Our bonding capacity is greater. So these are times that we have to evaluate these questions in terms of long-term solutions to the problem. But at the same time, you know, I think that it's fair that in 2012, when many of us were campaigning to be here, that was a question on the table. What happens after 5 years when Prop 30 expires?
The sales tax element of it.
The sales tax element. And I think that, but as we see ourselves now and recognizing how well we're doing and how we're able to, our general fund is growing to where we can support so many areas of the community that we haven't been able to do for so long, that there may be a greater, and education is always going to be right at the top in terms of priorities.
And I'm wondering, if all the legislature does is put the question on the ballot, is that breaking a promise?
That's not, at the end of the day, the voters can say no.
Right. And so I'm just wondering, you know, it's more of a philosophical conversation, you know, why? I really question whether that breaks a promise.
Right. I think that there is a lot of interest to try to figure out a solution to this problem.
Right.
That's one of the pieces that's under consideration. There's nothing that's sort of landed squarely on anyone's desk to say this is the direction that we're going. But it is part of the conversation. For many in the state, there is a clear belief that education and investing in education is something that we have to do. We have to turn this tide around, and we have to look at it not just K through 14, but higher ed as well.
Well, that brings up a whole other conversation about higher ed, because as you know, K-12, K-14 has been no doubt the sweet spot for the governor as we've been restoring cuts, whereas UCCSU definitely getting more money, but I don't have to tell you about the you know, battle royale between the governor and the chancellor. And so where
Commission of two.
Yes, exactly. So where do you go with that?
Well, I think, you know, we have to continue to have dialogue. I think that the chancellor and the regents have recognized that some of the pressure point issues in terms of so many out-of-state students coming in was taking place away from
Can I ask you something? And I just want to be a contrarian for a second. Couldn't one argue that having out-of-state students come in actually improves the educational experience? I mean, if you're at 90 to 95% Californians, you know, it's one worldview. So I'm just wondering if really we should be playing this game of, oh, we have too many out-of-state students.
No, I mean, you know, well, those are two different
there's
points.
a push-pull.
So there's the question as to whether it's a good thing to have, and I think it is. I think you want to have that kind of exchange, international students as well as students from out of state. But then the question is, where is the sort of the break-even point? Because then you have so many young people in our state who would like to go to school here in California.
His name is Chris Holden. He's the majority leader in the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance in Sacramento on California Edition.